Hi, John. Hope all is well. Today, I'd like to share with you results for the four tests that you took last week, as well as discuss various concerns that are implied by him. And feel free to ask any questions throughout. I hope that this is a collaborative process in which I can relate the results to you, and you can give me feedback and explain to me maybe certain things that I did not pick up, or certain nuances or subtleties. But I'm going to relate with you the results, and then we'll have a little discussion afterwards. So as you remember, last week on March 1st, we administered four tests. The first one was the BDI, the Beck Depression Inventory, which, if you recall, most of them were about 20 questions, a 21-item self-report questionnaire that assessed the severity of depression. It's a very widely used instrument. It's a very, very common one. It's one that you can have great confidence in. And that was the first tool that we used. The second tool was the Beck Hopelessness Scale, the BHS, which examines your thoughts and beliefs about the future. This, again, is also a self-report questionnaire and has 20 true-false items that measure three various aspects of hopelessness, which are feelings about the future, loss of motivation, and expectations. Now, the hopelessness construct is a major factor in many mental disorders. So even if you may look at it and say, well, this is not getting into the nitty-gritty of any various thing that we're looking for, but hopelessness comes along with many, many disorders, and it's correlated with suicidal ideation, depression, and therefore we felt that was an important one to take also, and you took it. The third one we took was the Beck Scale for Suicide Ideation, the BSI, or the BSS, which is that's also a 21-item self-report questionnaire that can identify the present severity of suicidal ideation. Things on this measure also assess, suicidal plans, deterrence to suicide, and how open you are to revealing suicidal thoughts. And finally, we took the Beck Anxiety Inventory, the BAI, which again has 21 items, and that's also very highly correlated to the above. However, Aaron Beck, in creating this assessment, he designed it specifically to reduce the overlap between depression and anxiety scales, because depression and anxiety have a lot of overlap, and he basically pinpointed and targeted anxiety based on questions which are really specifically anxiety related, so that the overlap can be reduced and we can target and pinpoint anxiety symptoms that are shared minimally with those of depression. So that's what we took last week. It took a little longer than an hour. And after reviewing the results, it was found that in the BDI, you had a raw score of 32, which puts you in the 99 percentile, which is severe. So that was the first concern. The first red flag concern was the high level of depression that you displayed based on your answers. Before we go into the intricate details, let's go to the BHS, the hopelessness scale, and you had a raw score of 13, or 97 percentile, which is moderate. Same thing in the BAI. The BAI, you had a raw score of 18, 95.8 percentile, which is moderate. So what we're seeing over here is that depression seems to be the number one symptom, with hopelessness and anxiety tagging behind. In the BSS, I saved that for last because you had a raw score of 2, but it was incomplete. And therefore, we have limited data in terms of suicidal ideation, directly. Let's begin with the BDI. You endorsed statements such as statements involving guilt, agitation, sadness, disappointment, and feeling like a failure. In addition, you stated that you get little pleasure from things that you used to enjoy. You get more tired and fatigued easier than usual, and you cry over things. The language there is cry over every little thing, which the combination of these symptoms suggests severe depression, but the most concerning statement of all was the statement that you would kill yourself if given the chance. Now, that's the biggest area of concern, because depression doesn't always lead to suicide. It puts people at high risk for suicide. But that statement really was a cause of concern. And before we go to the BSS, so we can talk about how you scored in the test that talked directly about suicidal ideation, let's digress a little bit and talk about anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression are also highly correlated with suicide. In the BAI, you endorsed certain panic-related symptoms of anxiety, moderate inability to relax, moderate fear of losing control, moderate difficulty breathing, feeling hot and shaky. You also reported mild heart-pounding dizziness, lightheadedness, fear of dying and choking, and discomfort in the abdomen. So we see a pattern over here of pretty much moderate anxiety symptoms, and the same thing with hopelessness. You responded true to the following pessimistic statements. Your future seems dark. You don't get the breaks that you wish you could have. You have no faith in the future, and you only have bad times to look forward to. Now, let me explain why these are so relevant. The combination of suicidal thoughts and high level of depression, hopelessness, and anxiety is a danger signal. In long-term studies, sustained long-term studies, BHS scores in the moderate and severe ranges have been found to be associated with a risk for eventual suicide. And it's even greater if there's an issue of impulse control behavior problems, because a high level of anxiety consistent with impulsive suicidal behavior can really pose a significant threat. And therefore, the statement that you made in the depression inventory, combined by the overall depression, anxiety, and hopelessness, is a cause for concern. And it's something that I'd like to talk to you at the end as we create a treatment plan going forward. Now let's talk about the BSS. In the BSS, you did not complete. And again, the BSS is the suicidal scale. And you endorse the statements that you have a moderate to strong wish to live. Your reasons for living or dying are about equal, and you have no desire to kill yourself. You try to save your life if you found yourself in a life-threatening situation, and you've never attempted suicide. So over here, what we see is somewhere in between. We see that you're not, according to this questionnaire, you don't have the ideation, the thoughts of committing suicide, taking your life immediately, but there definitely is some level of meaningless towards life, that type of sense. And as we mentioned before, you did not complete that. So what I'd like to talk to you today is, this seeming contradiction. I'm sure in your mind you have many things that you're thinking or saying or feeling, and you're communicating these things will be very important. The second thing is a plan going forward. So in terms of the contradiction, and I put it in quotes because you're eminently capable of shedding light that I'm not aware of. So the first question is, do you recall anything confusing when you took the test? When you took the test, was there anything about the test which you found to be confusing? That's the first question. The second question is, did you feel particularly depressed or distressed when taking the test? Was there anything about the test, the way it was administered, statements that I made when it was administered, even lighting, temperature, how you were feeling that day, that just made you feel depressed or distressed? And we're not even talking about sabotaging the test. I'm just talking about not feeling great. And we're people, we're human beings. So that is it's a normal, typical thing that you can have. We all have different days. And the third question I have is, did you feel that the test was important enough to answer accurately and consistently? In other words, my question is, when you took the test, did you understand that it is a tool which can be useful? If you perhaps felt not, we can maybe go over the results and talk about things which you maybe didn't necessarily recognize the critical nature of a certain question. And again, this is not to condemn or to say that you were, like I said before, sabotaging it. But it could be that with the understanding that this is something so critical, we could revisit it. And we could talk about the inconsistency that we found between the BSS and the BDI, particularly the one statement about suicide. So in terms of a plan going forward, I'd like to talk about a short-term plan, because whenever we have any type of suicidal ideation, we need to be proactive about it. Being passive or reactive is no way to deal with any life, which life is inherently precious. And John, in particular, you have so many qualities which we've talked about in the past, or that we've in the intake session we discussed, which I feel are are so important to emphasize. And as such, we need to make sure that you're safe. Your safety is paramount. That is the number one concern on any level. So the first question is, are you comfortable spending the next 20 minutes reflecting and writing about your feelings and experiences during the assessment? If you'd rather articulate it verbally, that's fine. If you want to do it in writing. And if you want it to be less than 20 minutes, that's also fine. I'm suggesting that we talk a little bit about how you felt when you took the assessment, so we can kind of get a grip and get a feeling of what you were feeling and how you reacted to the questions. The second question is, can you just finish the BSS? Again, that could take up to 20 minutes. Complete items 6 to 19. And the third question is, would you be able to meet tomorrow to further discuss your depression and anxiety, as well as your suicidal thoughts? Prevention should be an immediate focus of our treatment, and we're going to need to monitor our progress. Normally, we don't recommend seeing more than once or twice a week, but in this case, just for the matter of safety, we need to discuss and go over this. And one final point. I wanted to give you a little bit of a feeling of treatment for suicidal ideation. Just addressing depression or just depressing anxiety have different implications. Like, I'll give you an example. If you would improve your score, say, 3 months from now, we worked, let's say we implemented CBT, and you improved in anxiety and depression. So if the BAI score drops concurrently with a decline in depression, then that's a good sign, because that may indicate that much of the distress is a result of anxiety. However, let's say we were to only address the anxiety, so that could possibly not reduce the danger, because anxiety, to a certain extent, is a good thing. Anxiety can prevent a person from harming themselves. If there is still depression up here and anxiety down there, so that's not a holistic and comprehensive way of approaching the problem, because the depression could still be high, whereas the anxiety, which can serve a good purpose, if you know what I mean, of protecting yourself. Diminished anxiety can mean diminished reactivity to the perception of danger and harm, and less fear about hurting oneself. If that's a little bit of something which maybe we're not ready for the statement to talk about, but I'm just trying to give you a sense of what therapy and what we can do going forward. We really need to talk about everything together holistically and create a treatment plan. And that's why I feel it's so important we meet tomorrow, because the hopelessness, the depression, the anxiety, these are all things which are common, they're normal. To the extent that you have it perhaps a little bit, like we said, severe. But there's textbook ways of dealing with this. And once we're able to resolve the contradiction, or at least come up with some ideas of how to resolve the contradiction, we need to embark immediately on a treatment plan. And I'm really looking forward to doing so. You have my number. If you have any questions after the session, you're able to reach me. You're also able to reach 911 in case you're unable to reach me and you feel suicidal. That's something to realize, that there's a lot of support out there. There's hotlines. I'll give you the number afterwards. And there's a lot of resources out there, and a lot of people that really truly care about you, not just humanity in general, but John Sample, you. And that's important to realize. There's a lot of support out there. So let's go ahead with this. Let's finish today's session, if you're okay with that, and let's speak tomorrow more at length. And I'm really looking forward to working with you in the future.